I only work with businesses who are in this specific field. I only work with lawyers who are doing XYZ amount of revenue. I only work with real estate investors who have active portfolios and they have more than $200. Niching down and specializing. Or like Dawn did, I build relationships. I can get you insights before you need to act on them. That's a different type of value. So that differentiation and understanding what is the value conversation I'm having with my customer, it's critical before you even start setting the prices. It's important because then it allows us to know, okay, how does my customer value this, right? What do I deliver and how do they value this? That again goes down to you do the customer research. You don't just anchor to what everybody else is doing.
Hey guys, it's Eric Green. Listen, thank you for all your support of the podcast. We just had our biggest month ever, 30,000 downloads, all right? Which for us is a tenfold increase over last year. And I think there's a lot of interest in this with the IRS chaos and Trump and Doge and all the changes happening. But I wanted to just tell you how much we appreciate your being here. And we've got some really big guests coming on. We're attracting a lot of people because there's a lot of interest in this space. Today's guest, I think you're going to find equally fascinating. All right. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Etinosa Agbonlahor. All right. Etinosa helps companies transform pricing from kind of a simple math issue, getting into the psychology of the purchaser. All right. She has helped very large companies drive really profitable growth. She has shaped strategy for global financial institutions, including Fidelity Investments, Commonwealth Bank of Australia, and VC-backed startups. Her approach is to build data-driven pricing strategies using behavioral economics, huge, all right, and analytics to improve conversion, increase perceived value, and unlock revenue that is, what she says, hidden in plain sight. I think you are going to find today's conversation fascinating. She's been featured, by the way, in MarketWatch and Morningstar, all about behavioral finance. And she has a book on Amazon, How to Talk to Your Parents About Money. So without further ado, let's get into the podcast. And again, thank you guys for all your support. And I think you're going to find today's guest and this topic very, very on point and very helpful. All right. So, Etinosa, as I told you, I already recorded an intro for you. So when I decide whether to bring somebody on or not, it doesn't necessarily have to be IRS rep, but something that I think the audience would find helpful. And I got to tell you, one of the biggest questions I get about is pricing from my tax rep members, from accountants and lawyers who are like, well, how do you price this? Are you sure I can ask for that? And I'm not going to make you go listen to them, but a couple of years ago, I had Michelle Weinstein from The Abundant Accountant on. And on my own podcast, we're recording, and she said, you're charging for consults, right? I said, yeah, $500. She's like, whoa, time out. You're telling someone how to resolve a case for $500? She said, no, you're $1,000 starting today. And you can literally hear me go, huh? And so we talked about it internally. We're like, oh, that's a lot of money. So we did $995. Well, the next month I was on her podcast. She said, so it's been a month. How are we doing? I said, we went to $995. She's like, all right, fine. She said, how many folks have come in the last month? I said, 15. She said, how many people paid it? I said, 15. She said, you're too cheap. You're 1,500 starting today. Today, just for the audience, if you call me and say, Eric, I need to sort out what we can do, we take 3,500. And I will tell you, when I explain to the client, because that's a lot of money up to me, they're used to like free consults from lawyers.
Mm-hmm.
One, this phone call we're having, that is your free consult. Number two, because I now know what it is and that we can help you. But two, to do this properly, we got to pull transcripts. I need to see how much time remains. We got to do your financial analysis. When the clients hear that, now mostly from my assistant, they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And by the way, after we do that, now we're going to meet and I'm going to walk you through all your options and why. And they're like, wait a minute, you're going to actually do something? They all sign up. We have no problem getting 3,500 up front. So with that as background, when I had seen you on a podcast and I ended up connecting with your assistant, I think this topic of the, like financial psychology, the behavioral psychology, I find this fascinating. And even though I'm telling you, I'm championing myself, if somebody asked me why, I don't know. We just kept
It
going
just
up and
works.
up and people kept paying it. And so, willing buyer, willing seller, I guess. So just for the audience, can you give them your background, your company, kind of how did
Mhm.
you get into this?
Yes, absolutely. And I love that story, by the way, because what you're doing there is getting better at explaining the value of what you deliver to the client, and it absolutely makes sense to them. So we should dive deeper into that story. But essentially, as a behavioral economist, which is what I am and what I've been doing for more than a decade now, is I look at the psychology behind how people make financial decisions, right? Because we assume that we make financial decisions like robots. We're trying to optimize for the best possible price. That's not realistic. We're all human beings. We compare things to each other to understand what the value is. We are highly loss averse. We feel the pain of a loss much more than a gain. We're time sensitive. Would rather take a smaller reward sooner than have to wait for the future. All of those dynamics play into how we think about and how we value things, which then for a business owner plays into what they should be pricing, how to position their goods. But how I got into this was honestly, I am a personal finance nerd. I'm one of those kids. I love to understand how does the money work? How do taxes work? Macroeconomics. I don't know. I love that stuff. And I had a background in psychology. And when I was thinking through doing my next degree, a master's or PhD, a mentor gave me a book called Predictably Rational. It's by Dan Ariely, and it just looks into all of these really interesting quirks about how we make money and number decisions, right? So if somebody gives you $100 and you split it into 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, you're very going to feel reluctant to spend each 20. Whereas if it's just $100 bill, you have no problem breaking it and spending it. Our brains interact with money in really clever and quirky ways. So that just grabbed me. I was so hooked. I wanted to learn more. I ended up going to the UK to study a master's in behavioral economics, which is the intersection of the numbers, the psychology, and then also the neuroscience, what's happening actually in your brain when you're making these decisions. Studying in the UK led to me working for a bank in Australia, running a behavioral advisory portfolio, led to me working for an investment bank in the US, running and doing the same thing on the consumer finance on the investor side. And now has led to me working with both small businesses and enterprise on the how do you sell, how do you price your products in a way that are resonate with customers. So that has been the journey so far.
Well, so because that was going to be one of my questions. Were you a psychology person that got into economics, or were you a business
Mhm.
person that then went into the psychology? But it's funny you say that because myself, when I started tax prep, I didn't want to invest a dime because money was limited. But my
Mm.
time, no problem. I would spend hours and hours building the training and all this stuff. Today, time is running out.
Yeah.
So, I mean, look, I hope I live to 120. What is the old biblical saying? You should live to
Yes.
120. The truth of the matter is, I'm not counting on that. And so I'm probably playing the back nine, to use the golf metaphor. So the point is, time now has become, I'd rather throw money at it than waste my
Mhm.
time. But I just find it you're fascinating, the whole thing. So, I have so many questions that I actually took notes. When it comes to pricing,
Mhm.
make sure we can keep the audio, get to what the audience wants to hear, not Eric Green's quirkiness. What are the biggest mistakes that people make? I actually have a guess at this, but I'm fascinated what you think. What are the biggest mistakes? Because you work for some very large companies. What is the biggest mistake you see folks making when they're pricing their services or their product?
The biggest mistake, the number one that horrifies me, is copying their competitors' pricing. So you set up a business, you do some mystery shopping, you call your competitors around to see what their pricing is, and then you set your price at 10% less and call that research based. That terrifies me. Don't do that. Do not copy competitors' pricing because there's two reasons for that. The first one is that you don't know that your competitor hasn't made mistakes in their pricing. You don't know that they're not leaving money on the table. The second is that when you, especially for professional services like your tax reps or your IRS reps, everybody says they do the same thing, right? We all do resolution. We help clients navigate tricky situations with audits. You don't know if you deliver way more value, like you said at the start, right? Not only are you having this consult with them, you're then going to walk them through these are the options you have as next steps, which is immensely valuable. Somebody else could be offering a consult and just being like, all right, that was great. Wish you the best. No conversation about next steps or the value, etc. But you're both priced at the same level. However, you're delivering way more value for the same price than your competitor is. So when you copy competitors' pricing, there's a higher likelihood of underpricing because you're basically going in blind and you're hoping that your competitor knows what they're doing when they set their prices. And naturally sets you up for a race to the bottom, but we won't go into all of that. But that's one of the biggest. That's the one that scares me the most. That's the one that gets me to go, okay, let's stop everything. I'm going to interject into this conversation. Let's walk away from that. That's the first one. The other one actually is that I always see a lack of confidence will come out in your pricing. So you hear business owners say things like, well, I could never pay that much for this service. No one is asking you to. You're asking your customer to pay for it. What will your customer pay for it? How do they value it? What is it? How useful is it to them? Right? You're an expert in what you do, so you know how it costs. You know the ins and outs. You can do this work easily because you have learned it for a long time. What you value it at as an expert is naturally going to be a little bit lower than somebody for whom it actually solves real problems and gets them out of real issues, right? So that anchoring to, well, what would I, as Etinosa Agbonlahor, the behavioral economist, pay for pricing services is ridiculous. Also, don't do that. That also is a big mistake I see businesses make. The final one is a fear of raising prices because they think that customers are walking around with this magnifying glass, just waiting for them to touch something by their price and they're going to flip the table and walk away and that's it. And that, again, that's a lack of confidence coming through because the reality, as we can get deeper into this, is that most people are actually not that price aware. We know and we keep prices in mind when we're shopping for them in the moment, but once we're done, that's it. We move on to the literally more than 10,000 other decisions we have to make every day. We move on to one of those decisions. So those three things in terms of the anchoring to what we would pay for our services and trying to use this as a baseline for what your customers would pay are that notion of the spotlight effect, thinking your customers or your clients are waiting for you to change one thing and then they're going to leave you. And then also just that notion that we are what's the last? The notion that our customers are coming to us solely based on price and that there's nothing else that they care about in terms of working with us. Those three mistakes, and of course, naturally, the copying competitors, those three things will influence and lead to customers making, or your business is making big mistakes with their pricing.
Yeah. No, so another person I need to introduce you to is Dawn Brolin. She's a friend of mine. She's local here. Dawn has a great story where she had been pushed by some of her mentors to move from just tax returns or, the bookkeeping to a subscription model.
Mm.
And she was very high up and for 2 years dragged her feet on this. And finally, out of more desperation, just at the breaking point, picked 10 clients. I've had her on the podcast. She talks about this and went to them and said, look, I can't work with you like this. And here's the biggest thing. It's what she did is she explained the value. She said, look, this doing a return afterward, it's a postmortem. We need to meet quarterly. We need to be doing planning when I can give you real advice. I don't want you to tell me after the year end you bought a new truck. Call me from the dealership because I can help you in real time. All right. It's a flat fee. And she went, I don't remember the minimum number, but let's say it was $750 a month. That is a huge jump for her business clients who were used to just paying for a return, $2,500 or whatever. They're now going to $9,000. Every one of them said the same thing, all 10. Wait a minute. You mean I can call you whenever I have a question and I'm not going to get billed? She said, no, we are going to be, she called it relationship pricing. We're in a relationship now. I can make you more profitable and help you drive the bottom line, get a line of all the things that I should be doing that no one wants to pay. It's now just flat fee. All 10 signed up. She went to the next 10 and the next 10. And after that, sold off the rest of her practice, doubled her income. And now the joke is, and it's not a joke, I called her on April 14th because I had a question. I don't get her. It's April 14th. The deadline is, she called back around 4:00 and I said, I'm sure you're busy. She said, no, I was playing golf. It was 64 degrees here in Connecticut on April 14th. Her work was all done before April 1st. So she's built the practice that she can work with the client she wants to. But and I think, as you pointed out, It's explaining the value. You can look
Yeah.
at H&R Block and say, well, if they're only charging 250, I can't go more than you need to explain why you're better. Not that necessarily better, why what you're offering is different.
Yeah, we talk about this as differentiation, right? You can go into a bazaar, you want to buy a white t-shirt, you can go into a bazaar and you haggle over it, you have that you're treated like a utility. You go into a high-end store, they sit you down, they bring you some water, they bring the t-shirt to you, you choose one. The price points are very different because the surrounding context is very different. So when you're setting up the business, when you're thinking through how do I differentiate myself, how do I position myself, it is what is the value I'm communicating to my customer? And it can be different. There's different types of value, right? I only work with businesses who are in this specific field. I only work with lawyers who are doing XYZ amount of revenue. I only work with real estate investors who have active portfolios and they have more than $200. Niching down and specializing, or like Dawn did, I build relationships. I can get you insights before you need to act on them. That's a different type of value. So that differentiation and understanding what is the value conversation I'm having with my customer, it's critical before you even start setting the prices. It's important because then it allows you to know, okay, how does my customer value this, right? What do I deliver and how do they value this? That again goes down to you do the customer research. You don't just anchor to what everybody else is doing.
Right. Right. No, that differentiate. And by the way, hotel chains do this. Four Seasons, isn't selling you a hotel room; it's an experience. The
Mm.
spa, the restaurant, that's why you're paying a ridiculous amount for what's effectively a bed. But it's the entire package. Again, I had so many questions. I just want to make sure, yeah, because you just checked a lot of them. But to get back to you mentioned the fear. If I
Mhm.
raise my prices, they're all going to drop. If
Mm.
I raise my prices, they're all going to leave. I have another interesting story about that, but, when you've worked with companies that raised prices, again, I can guess the answer. I'm assuming that all their clients didn't leave.
No, all their clients did not. They
Yeah,
did not.
I'm wondering actually if you had the experience where almost no one left. Like, it was
All
it
the
wasn't even a blip.
Let me tell you an experiment that was run around this because it's going to explain why all the clients don't leave when you think they're all going to flip the table and walk away. So, big marketing study done a couple of years ago. Imagine you're at a grocery store. I don't know your local. What do they have in Connecticut? Hortons? Is that a grocery store?
Oh, no, Stop and Shop is big up
Local Stop
here.
and Shop.
Yep, Big Y, you know, I was just in Florida, they have Publix is their
Yes,
big
we have.
store.
Yeah, I'm back in Florida, so we have a Publix. All right. So let's say you're at your Stop and Shop. You've just put in a box of I don't know coffee into your basket and somebody walks up to you with a clipboard and says, "Hey, I'll give you $1 if you can tell me how much that coffee you just put into your basket. Like you just put it into your basket. How much is it?" Guess how many people out of 800 would tell them what the price was of the thing they had just touched?
10.
Less than half.
Oh,
Less than half of the people who they went up to knew what the price was. Of those, the half who could venture some sort of number, I think it was 750. Less than even half of those had the number accurate within 10 cents. And when the item was on sale, meaning when it was completely different from what it usually was, a much lower number could respond. What that says to us is that we are not walking around keeping the price of Eric's tax services in our minds. We're not walking around keeping the price of coffee in our minds. We've got a lot of other things to do, right? And so when you as a business are saying, okay, it's time to raise prices because our demand is out, we just have so many inbound referrals. Things are changing rapidly. We don't have enough capacity, or we haven't touched prices in 18 months. We should be having that conversation now. When you're at that place, it feels tempting to think that if we change things, people will walk away. The fact is, A, people aren't, it's just not that salient to them. B, if you can have the conversation cleanly, this is the value we've been providing this whole time. This is how much more value you've gotten from us in the last year or so. Or this is what the value is going to look like moving forward. I want to help you make decisions from a place of insight, from a place of confidence. I want to save you money proactively, which is why now our model is going to look like this, or our price is going to be XYZ. All of that helps you retain the customers. But also, I don't think it's a bad thing is if you raise prices and a couple of customers leave, right?
well, that was gonna be my question is and again, I got a funny story about this, I'll tell after, but at some point, I've heard some tax rep members, There's an old saying that they told me in law school, and you hear older lawyers throw this around. You make more money on the cases you don't take.
Mm,
And, of course, at the time, you're like, huh? But once you've been burned quite a bit, or you've put in a ton of time to not get paid what you're really worth, that it starts to make sense. At what point is it time to start cutting clients loose?
mm. Three signs, right? The first one is if you have just a lot more inbound, right? All of your business now is coming inbound, it's coming through referrals. You're in demand. You're not having to go out and like cold call or prospect as much. That's saying that your business is starting to move to a new level of maturity. You're now at a place where you can go, okay, what kind of clients do I like working with? What are the kind of clients who are higher margin for me? What kind of clients allow me to play golf on a day when all of my colleagues are stressed out and haven't slept in a few days, right? So it allows us to make that decision of, okay, the business has enough word of mouth, it has enough visibility that I can decide what to do and I can make decisions around the kinds of clients I want to work with moving forward. So that's the kind of first sign. It's just that the volume that's coming in of its own volition or organically. The second sign is just capacity, right? Unfortunately, this is more of a negative one, but if you are at the place where all the staff is busy all the time, there's no capacity, you're struggling to like hire or absorb all of the business that you're getting, that's also a sign that it's time for you to make some decisions around who do you want to work with? Why do you want to work with them? What's going to allow your staff to work effectively? Because if your staff can absorb 100 clients a month, you should probably be bringing them 70 because you want people, you want them focused, you want them doing great work, you want them doing excellent work. You don't want them at capacity and stressed out. And you also, as a business owner, don't want to be at capacity and stressed out all the time. So what allows you to make those decisions and what allows you to make that transition in terms of the clients you're choosing to work with? And the third one is just who's a joy to work with, right? Who's excellent? Who do you enjoy working with? What types of clients do you have fun working with? And who has been nothing but a drain? Who do your clients kind of dread picking up the phone to have conversations with? That also is a sign.
Yep. I basically, I have a friend who has a tax preparation business, 2,000 clients,
Mm,
and he's whining every year about this. So
mm,
I said to him, I said, raise everybody across the board $100.
mm.
And he was like, no, half of them will leave. I said, good. I mean, it's an extra 100,000 and you're doing half the work.
Yep.
And he said,
Hmm.
good idea. So he did. Afterward, he said, nobody left. I mean, he lost like 10 people or something. I said, well, raise it another
Raise
50
it
or
again.
75.
Yeah.
I said, keep raising it until you're down to 600 clients. And now you're making double the income. You don't need all these, part-time staff to come in it's like babysitting, right? You're now an HR director with people who they don't show up. They don't,
And every
and
time somebody leaves, you have to start the process all over again.
right. Training and all the rest. And so, same thing like I told tax rep members, like when Dawn did her thing,
Mm,
I had people, oh, I couldn't ask my clients to do that. I said, what about new ones? They don't know the difference. If
yep.
any new business comes in, that is how you work. And I said, as you get more and more of those, your tolerance for the old stuff is gonna go down. Then you have
Yep.
no problem announcing this. And if they leave, let them leave.
Mm. And there's nuance in this, right? This is for businesses that are mature. This is for businesses that you have the volume, you have that expertise, you've done this long enough and have enough
Mhm.
of a book to then make the decision of, okay, I can comfortably allow XYZ amount of people to go banking on the fact that I'm going to keep these other ones at this kind of margin. Or I'm going to leave everyone in the legacy pricing and I'm going to test a new pricing with prospects as they're coming in and just see what resonates, right? What works well for them. And as I gain more belief, because all of this comes down to it's what's between our, our head. It's your belief that's stopping you from sitting down and running the numbers and going, if I had 200 or if 20 customers left me, but I could raise my rates by this much, what's the new margin? Right? It's a simple calculation. We're all in finance, but your brain stops you from even sitting down and running that modeling because that big belief of everyone is going to leave and I'm going to ruin the business I've worked for years to build. So if you can get through that fear and just sit down and run the numbers and go to the level of, do you know what? I'm not yet comfortable with anybody leaving. Let me try this on prospects. Let's see what they say. Or, it's honestly, we could absorb 20 people leaving if the new margins would bring us this. Let's test it. You gotta get to that level of comfort in your at modeling.
They talk about the, fake it till you make it kind of thing. There's a great book. I don't know if you know The Alter Ego Effect. Have you read that?
That doesn't sound familiar.
It,
Let me look
it's
that.
the author interviews very famous people
Mm,
who and one of the best known of, there's a young girl, African American, that sings in her church, phenomenal voice, will never get big unless she goes out and shakes her thing on for rock and roll on stage.
mm,
It's not her. She can't
mm,
get herself there, so she creates an alter ego.
mm,
And so if you asked her, she never did any of that. The alter ego went and
mm.
did that. And eventually she came to the conclusion she no longer needed the alter ego. So one of Beyonce's albums is Goodbye Sasha Fierce. Sasha Fierce was the alter ego that went and did all that.
Yeah, yeah,
Beyonce herself was the church
yeah.
choir.
Church girl. Yeah.
Yeah. And the author was talking about this, and I think it was Bo Jackson was
Mm,
there, came up to him and said, I got to tell you something. Bo never did any of that stuff. Bo's quiet and stays home. I don't remember that his alter ego went and did all of those things on the field. Dave Goggins, who's a former Navy SEAL, wrote a best-selling book, Can't
love
Hurt
that
Me.
book. Yep.
Yeah. But he talks about this, having his alter ego who goes and does that because that's not his natural. So it's one of the books I recommend to my tax rep members is you have to just, again, if you're going to fake it, you've paid to be trained to do IRS rep. I tell them that you're not if they were military, we're not infantry. You're now the Army Rangers or Green Berets or Navy SEALs. We're the special forces. We come in when everything has gone to and we have to help clean things up. And you still know way more than your client, even if you don't know everything. And
Mm-hmm.
tax rep is here to help them with that. But you just need to put your game face on, your
Yep.
alter ego, that I am the specialist. I can do this. And even if I can't, I got people I can bring in that can do this. I know I can resolve this. And
Yep.
you want to be paid accordingly and you charge accordingly. But, what do you tell people who are new? Because I do run into this. I'm new at this. I don't know what to charge.
Mm,
And again, you don't want to start shopping around. Now, I don't know that I've been giving good advice. My advice has been, look, what are you charging? Like, what are bookkeepers getting? Or they get $100 an hour. If you go and look at the larger accounting firms, they're billing at 450, 500, whatever. I said, you know what? Start at 295 an hour. The worst thing that'll happen is you've undercharged. But see if the client will sign up. And again, you can work this way, that way until you hit a point where people start to balk. But I don't know if that's good advice.
I don't think it's bad advice, but I would also say, and what I do say is, especially if they're new businesses or new founders, do this. Get five of your ICP, like your ideal customer profile.
Yep.
Do the work for them for free, and then you run what we call a Van Westendorp pricing sensitivity test with them. What would be too low that you'd think this was too cheap and you'd walk away if I offered it at this service? What would be, you'd think it was a bargain? What would be starting to get expensive, but you're still willing to pay it? And what would be so expensive you'd walk away, right? You do this with the 5 customers who have just walked through your process, or 3 customers, right? Pick your number. And you're going to get from them a sense of, I think that too expensive would be $600 an hour, but I could see $450. I thought this was really useful, right? And you get that range from them. It's quick, it's effective, and it allows you to kind of like build belief around the value of what you're offering. And it also allows you to ask questions like, what was the value? What else did you get from this? Right? I'm working and I take my own medicine, working on revenue strategy sessions for 2026 for small businesses. So I'm running the proof of concept now with 5 small businesses. And I'm asking them the same questions, but I'm also asking them things like, what is the value that you've gotten from this? And somebody said, I run a finance business, but it was an aha moment when I realized that I have to factor in the hours that I spent building the tools and the trainings into the margins. And when we did that, my margins were negative.
Right.
And so now I have to go think through, how do I scale this without having to build from scratch all the time? right? We saved her $19,000 just by talking through that and figuring out a better model for her. But by doing that, it allows me to go, oh, okay, when I'm positioning this, when I'm trying to sell this, and when I'm like launching this thing, I can't just talk about, oh, it's going to be revenue and like all of these numbers. I have to talk about financial clarity. I have to talk about confidence. I have to talk about what do you charge and how does that affect your margins? So going back to the original question, you can absolutely pick a number in between the two, you know, what your bookkeepers are doing and what your high-end enterprise are doing and just play the game in real time. That's a valid strategy. Or you can pick a couple of people, small, quick, agile tests will give you the data and will allow you to also get some insights as to how you position yourself for your different customer profiles.
So just before we wrap up, for folks who are listening to this, what are some first steps in terms of thinking about and bringing the psychological aspect into their pricing? Just some practical things. What should they be thinking about? Because quite frankly, we do this too. We're so busy now. We're looking at, should we up our pricing? So this is, and for the audience, this isn't kind of all right, we're done now. We dealt with pricing. It is an ongoing living thing. And I'm going to throw in my 2 cents. This is the lifeblood of your business. Without cash, it's great to tell people we now have a 21-person firm and all this. Without cash, that's 21-person firm can become a leviathan. We have payroll, we have overhead, we have rent. So, bigger isn't necessarily better. So for us, pricing wasn't something Jeff and I sorted out 10 years ago and now we're done. It is a multiple times a year we get together and look at the time we're spending. What is the market doing? How busy are we? The incoming. So this is something you're going to not just deal with now, you're going to should be dealing with on an ongoing basis. But for those first steps are what people should be thinking about.
And first of all, spot on, I tell people you want to treat your pricing like a feature, not a reaction, meaning that you do exactly what you said you and Jeff do. You sit down every few months, every quarter, and you're intentional about what are we doing with our prices. It doesn't mean you're changing it every quarter, but it does mean you have clarity as to what should the new pricing be. Is it the same? What is the business doing? And not as the market conditions changed. And so now we're freaking out trying to raise prices before, our costs swallow us. But in terms of specific things that business owners can do to get started, the first thing is that understand that people make decisions relative to a reference point, right? So if you made $10,000, but your colleagues who started the business at the same time as you are bringing in $20,000, you want to go kick rocks. However, if you made $10,000 and your colleagues started at the same time as you, they're pulling in $3,000, you're like, doing pretty good. This is great, right? Your customers are doing the same thing. They're making decisions relative to a reference point. So when you put your pricing, your packaging in front of customers, try and put options, right? So you don't want the decision they're making to be yes or no. It's which of these should I be choosing? How do I decide, right? Also, you want to try and control that reference point as much as possible. You might have a package or a tier or a model that is a little bit higher price. It's more bells and whistles. You don't expect most people will choose that, but it allows them to compare the thing you do want them to choose to that big, fancy, high price and go, maybe this is more reasonable option, so let me go with this. So just thinking through how you set up your prices in a way that people compare across them and go for the model that you do want. We worked with an edtech platform on this. They were selling B2B. They wanted to start to sell directly into like families and individuals. And so by just rearranging their pricing and introducing some tiers that the parents could compare across, we had 90% of their ICP of the parents choosing the tier that they wanted them to choose, right? So just thinking through how you set up those tiers relative to each other is the first one. The second thing with that is just understanding that people will make decisions across. We do this thing where we call it anchoring and adjusting. And so you look at a big number first or a small number first, and you adjust away from that. And so just thinking through and pulling that into your space in terms of what is the number they're going to see first? And then what do I want them to ultimately choose? Do I start with, the most expensive is $3,500, or other firms do this for $4,500, but they only offer these 3 things. We do it at $2,500 and we offer these 6 things. And here's why we do it in this way. Just being very clear about that value conversation is the same thing we've been talking about. but putting that and spelling that out in numbers. The last thing I want to touch on, because we talked about price raising quite a bit, when you do raise prices in behavioral economics, we have this thing, we call it the Weber-Fechner law. It's sort of when you're turning up the dial of, let's say your Spotify dial. If you turn it up very quickly, you notice the difference, right? So you're going from 0 to 100, it's jarring to you. If you go slowly, you don't notice the volume kind of creeping up as much. And so with your customers, when you think through raising prices, you might start with customers who are doing the most volume, they take up more of your time, and you raise it up a little bit. But you have a plan for over time, we're going to get to this higher increase that my prospects are paying now, that the new customers are paying. So slowly over time, you have a plan of how you're going to increase the prices versus going from 0 to 100 very quickly because you're worried that you've been leaving money on the table. So those three things: offer options, understand what the anchor and adjustment, what is the big number you want to put in front of customers, and how do you tell that story to them that you know they want to compare across. And also, if you're raising prices, slowly over time, that Weber-Fechner law, slowly over time, rather than everything all at once, is a more reasonable path to go with.
Really. It's a fascinating conversation. I am picturing this as a webinar. Actually, we really should do. But thank you for taking the time. For the audience, because you work with companies, this is what you do. How best can they reach out to you?
Yes, absolutely. So we actually have free 15-minute pricing audits every Monday. It's only on Mondays. We have a limit. We do a limited amount every Monday. But if they're interested, if you're a business, you're thinking about your pricing, worried about leaving money on the table, go to our website, reach out to us through that, tell us you're interested in a free pricing audit, and my staff will reach back out to you and we'll get you slotted in for a Monday.
All right, Jess, I'll put the link in the description. What is, for the folks listening to this on the podcast, the audio, what is the website?
Yes, it is our business name, Decision Alpha. So you go to decisionalpha.co, and you can pop us an email through that.
Decisionalpha.co. I will put the link in the description below. Thank you for taking the time. Again, I've got more questions now, but no, this is absolutely a webinar that we need to do. But thank you. And listen, everyone, thanks for listening in. And as I started off with, 30,000 downloads, it's heartwarming that there are enough people finding value here. So thank you for listening. And until next time on the podcast, Etinosa, thank you.
Thank you for having me. I loved the conversation.